Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to the next episode of the Open Booth. We're here at a new location as usual, and we're going to come on into the booth. So I'm your host, Matthew Brown, of course, and today we have a special guest, and his name is Rob Hoskins, but a lot of people call him Coach. So, Coach, I'm going to start with a series of questions for you. So, first of all, a lot of people call you Coach.
Well, because at this school, the older Tucker High School, I coached here from 1977 to 1993. I coached 5 different sports, coached over 2,000 kids, I think, taught about that many, taught driver ed, health, phys ed, coached soccer, basketball, indoor track, cross country, and tennis.
Okay.
I taught kids from probably 37 different countries here at Tucker over that time period.
So,
and I also worked in a ministry called Young Life while I was here.
my question for you is, where did we first meet?
We first met probably, that's a good question. Matthew, you played soccer and ran cross country, and you were in our Young Life Club at Tucker, which is a Christian outreach to high school kids.
Do you remember what year it was that we met?
I don't even remember what year it was. And I also knew you in other areas as well.
It was probably, I would say, probably around 1985, I would think.
Yeah, because you always remind me that the greatest class in your estimation was the class of 1987, because that's the year that you graduated.
Yes.
And my answer always was that was a good year also. I couldn't say one year was better than the rest.
So part of what's going on in the booth here is I kind of want to know a little bit more about whoever I interview. So one of the questions that I ask is, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Henrico County. Well, actually, I was born in Norfolk, but we lived on a place called Cornwall Road. It was in Freeman District. I went to Freeman High School, and that was always interesting to coach at our rival school, which is Tucker. That was the school we always wanted to beat, was Freeman. So
you went to Freeman, and then you started teaching at Tucker.
Right, so all my loyalties went to Tucker, okay? All my loyalties were there.
Well, so I want to ask you a question. When you were growing up, when you were, let's say, I don't know, what your first memories, what were your first memories of growing up? How far back can you remember? How old were you, your first memories?
Oh, probably back, I don't know, 5, 6, or 7. Had 3 older sisters, and they would always pick on you, so I can remember that.
What was, now, is there like a standout memory from your...
Oh yeah, one of my sisters, the scary thing back then was the Wizard of Oz, and she put on this old looking witch hat and grimace her face and act like she was the Wicked Witch, and I'd go running through the house scared to death.
Now, were you a good brother?
I was a wonderful brother.
Wonderful. Yes, if you do admit so yourself.
Yeah, I thought so.
So part of some of the things I ask is, when you were growing up, do you remember ever like being like, I don't know, let's just say feeling different from other people, or did you feel like you fit into the crowd? Like, were you like part of the in crowd, or were you, how did you feel like when you were young?
At Freeman at the time, we had over 2,000 kids in just grades 10, 11, and 12. So if you could get through the hallways barely, it was good. But I was a pretty smart kid, but I didn't play any sports in high school. I worked all the way through high school. So now we had, back then, is the end of the baby boomer generation, and we had 2 bus shifts. If we did ride a bus, we had 3 in a seat and lined up standing the rest of the way through the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, do you think you were like in elementary, middle school? Did you feel like you were like one of the the in kids, or
No.
did you not even care about that
No,
kind
we
of thing?
didn't even care about that stuff. We just had neighborhood kids. We'd get together and play basketball and football. We'd get 14 kids together and play a pickup baseball game.
Yeah.
But we'd travel 10 miles just to go play ball or something together. And it's kind of like that the story of the kid Sandlot. If we lost the ball or fell apart or a dog took it, we had to stop.
Now, I know some things about you now because I've known you for a long time, but have you always had like a pretty good memory?
Well, it's not as good now as it used to be.
Now, like in school, were you a good student and everything?
I was a very good student. I was 40 something in the class of 640 some. So I really wasn't a nerd. I wasn't an athlete. I kind of mixed in with all groups. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you were young, like tell me about your like family life. Was your parents get along well? Was they have a good relationship like most of the time you remember and all that stuff?
I think so. Yeah. We had 4 of us. I was the youngest, and there were 7 years between all 4 of us. Yeah. But having 3 older sisters was like having 4 mothers. They like to tell me what to do.
Now, okay, so were you the youngest of all these?
I was the youngest. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
They've all passed away now.
They've all passed away now, including your parents? No?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And Dad worked for the railroad, so he traveled a lot. So Mom pretty well kept the house straight during the week.
Yeah.
But they were good. They were married, I think, 47 years when Dad died. Yeah.
Now, when you were in elementary school, what elementary school did you go to?
Tuckahoe Elementary.
Tuckahoe. Okay.
Then we went to Tuckahoe Junior High. Then went to Freeman.
Okay.
And then I drifted over and went to University of Richmond. I walked to school because we're only about a mile from there.
Okay. And what year did you graduate from University of Richmond?
1977.
77.
That's the year I started teaching and coaching at Tucker in the fall of 77.
Now, would you say, looking back over the time that you were young, elementary school, middle school, high school, was there any I'll just call them significant events, like a death of like a loved one or some kind of thing that happened that maybe changed your view of life or anything like that? Was there anything kind of like that happened? Oftentimes there is, sometimes there's not for people.
We're always a close family. We had relatives. Mom came from Illinois and Dad came from Iowa, and we go back. And family vacations was driving through Ohio to see my dad's brother and cousins, and then we'd go in Illinois and see Grandma and all the cousins there. We were the Southerners, and the rest of them were Northerners.
Right. I've heard stories from people that I've interviewed that, they say, I was super close to my grandfather, and when my grandfather died, it really sent like a shock through my life kind of thing. But there was nothing like that for you, nothing like a significant person that you lost or anything like that?
Well, not at that age, no. Not growing up, yeah. And I can still see going to church together. We always, with 3 girls and a pokey mother, she didn't get moved real fast. We made it to church. We got to sneak up in the balconies, and the preacher would just look up and grin at us, saying we were probably 20 minutes into the service, but we got there.
Okay.
But that wasn't an exception. On Sunday morning, we'd be in church. You know? And I learned you didn't tell your mother when you were about ready to go in the church that a hose was running or she had 2 different earrings on or something like that. You just didn't tell her that. That wasn't a good thing to say. Right.
Now, when you brought up church and stuff like that, has that been a significant thing in your life? Or?
Absolutely. And that's something it wasn't an option. Dad didn't say, okay, we're going to church. Get ready, and you went to church. And that was very significant, yes.
Yeah. Now, so when you went to church with your family, was there ever any thought of when you got to college, did you keep on going on your own, or did you just was there a time that you're thought about not going for a while, or?
No, we kept going. But one of my best friends, actually he was a year younger than me. He introduced me to Young Life, and when I got on my freshman year, walking back from school one morning, I really understood what Jesus had done for me. And that moment on, I needed to share it. So my Young Life leader at that time, and Young Life is a high school outreach ministry to kids about trying to share Jesus with people. We met together almost every week. We'd have a little Bible study together and got involved with InterVarsity and Young Life Fellowship. And from that point on, I was involved as a volunteer leader in Young Life for over 20 years. Both while I was in college, we worked with the Douglas Freeman Club, and then worked off and on for 16 years here at Tucker, helping to run the Young Life Club.
So when you got involved in Young Life, you said that was just because somebody invited you.
Absolutely. And, you know, the Christian faith, you have a lot of technology, but it's always shared the best way that Jesus did was just person to person, a personal relationship. Young Life had a theory, but a way of putting it, you know, you just share the gospel with somebody. You know, your life shares the gospel. You win the right to be heard. So you start with a relationship with
I don't know if I've ever asked you this question. Like, when was so you kind of hinted on it there in just a minute ago, but when was the very first time you actually heard the gospel clear enough to respond to it? Or
well, yeah, I probably in the 5th grade, but it made more sense as I really got, you know, into college.
Yeah,
you knew more of what you needed to, what Jesus had done, and what you needed to really give yourself completely.
Yeah, I want you to put it into your words. What was that? What was that?
Well, I just knew that he had, you know, he did everything for me. What it meant to make a complete commitment to him.
I mean, pretend I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, you give your life to Jesus, you know, and I'd done it before. It's kind of like as you grow in your faith, you learn more of what you need to give to the Lord. You know, and that's an ongoing process throughout your life.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, I even changed my major. I started in college. I was going to be a poli-sci major. I was going to be a lawyer. I don't know if you can imagine me being a lawyer. But, and the Lord has a sense of humor. I ended up majoring in physical education, and most people know me. I'm not the most coordinated person on 2 feet. So God has always had a sense of humor, but it worked out, and that led me basically to being a high school teacher, driver ed, phys ed, health teacher here at Tucker. And I always like to laugh because after the 16 years here, I was asked before then by a member of my 9th grade basketball team. His dad wanted me to come out to their church, Shady Grove Methodist Church. It used to be the tiny little Shady Grove church, to teach Sunday school, and then it ended up going from once a month to 2 Sundays to 4 Sundays. And I helped to get the men's group together again, got the youth group started again, became the lay leader, and 2 ladies in the adult Sunday school class, Catherine Ellis and Lynn Williamson, really talked to me about, the preacher there had given me about 10 opportunities to preach. And I don't know what it is, but they were pleased that I knew that from Young Life. And when you preach, you have to preach from the Bible. That's it. I mean, if you're a preacher, a Christian preacher, you preach from the Bible. There's nowhere else of doing it. And they encouraged me to go to seminary, and I prayed about it. And it was hard because I love teaching and coaching at Tucker. I love working with the youngsters, and, you know, I had opportunities to share my faith at times. In fact, I remember sitting in the basketball team room one time, or then in cross country too, nobody be in the locker room or in the team room, and I'd go by each spot and pray for the kids on the team. They didn't know it. I would pray for their lives and what was going on with them, and hoping that somehow I could share with them at some time. And I remember the last year I was at Tucker, I was given the opportunity, this is the last time it was done on the Tucker campus, the baccalaureate message, which I did in the old auditorium here at Tucker. I was quite an honor because the students wanted me to do that.
Yeah, so we'll take a moment to realize where we are. So if you haven't figured this out, because maybe people who are watching this don't know, you know, maybe they're not from Virginia, but I have a feeling a lot of people know Coach already. That's why they're watching this. But the behind us is actually like the original parking lot there that they had the driver's ed in, but hardly anything else may not be recognizable because there's the whole new school out here behind us and the new stadium and everything. We're sitting actually like probably around where the tennis courts used to be.
There was a basketball black court and the tennis courts, and
Yeah.
of course behind me to my right there would be the baseball field. That's the only thing that was there for a long time.
Yeah.
The rest of the school was, those of you who went here in the past or drove by know that it was a campus style school, completely different, very open.
I had one of my sons graduate from here.
Yeah, and back over by Parham Road there, if you turned around on your gym class, some of the kids would try to shoot arrows over into Parham Road with cars going by, or our soccer practices down there. Every once in a while, a ball would drift over the fence because they weren't always as accurate as they should be shooting at the goal.
I remember because I was in soccer with you, and we'd come out. It was me and Jerry Roton would come out, and we'd go out on the front field and practice by ourselves sometimes, just get in some kicks and some one-on-one stuff like that. That was always kind of fun.
We used to have a cross-country home course that went all the way around the bound behind the baseball field, the lower fields, and back through the woods behind St. Martin's Church. We had our own home course and cross-country as well.
Yeah.
And
so when you were talking about your experience and being invited to the Young Life, that kind of mirrors my own experience, because like you or someone at Tucker, I can't remember the exact person, invited me to a Young Life. And that was, my first experience. I didn't grow up in church or anything like that. My family didn't go to church except for Christmas, and Easter kind of thing. It was Catholic, but some of it was in Latin, so hard to understand. but the thing was that I kept on going to the Young Life meetings, and it was, for people who have never experienced Young Life thing, it's like all the people like in your school. If somebody invites you somewhere in your school, that's a special thing anyway. Mm-hmm. In the 80s when I was in high school, there was a little bit more cliquish kind of thing, going on. Like there was the jocks and this, and there was all that kind of thing. And so it seemed like everybody got invited to Young Life, and you had a lot of different people there. And so at a Young Life camp, that's when I really heard the message. You kind of hinted on it, which was, to give your life to Jesus. And kind of like when I was thinking about that, then it really meant for me, like, I want to control everything about my life. But Jesus, like, because of his death on the cross and what he did to sacrifice for my sins that I would have to take on, which basically meant I would be dead because everyone's dead in their sins, that he would take over the reins for my life. And it's kind of paralleled you a little bit, which is like, it took me a number of years to really truly appreciate that and kind of get the depth and understanding of what the gospel message really was in that, even though I had accepted it.
Right.
I had accepted I want to give up my life to Christ, to turn it over. But it's like the depth of the truly what was accomplished on the cross, and what was the debt that, like someone said one time, it's like, it's not that we were out in the middle of an ocean and we were drowning and we were looking for a savior. It's that we were dead at the bottom of the ocean, buried in our sin, like under the ocean, with no hope of recovery, and Jesus saved us. So it's a totally different kind of like.
Right. Well, and you go back to Young Life. We always told people, Young Life Club was fun. We had crazy guitar players and goofy skits and everything.
Yeah.
But we've always been told, and I believe this even in church ministry, because I did 26 years of full church ministry after the 20 years of Young Life work, it's a sin to bore somebody with the gospel. It's exciting. It's the words of life, right. So that is very, very important.
Well, touching on what you just said, so I joked with you that you've retired 3 times.
Yes, I have.
It hasn't stuck yet.
Yeah, well, and Tucker School here, Tucker High School, when I was here, it varied from 2,000 students. Sometimes they opened up a new school like Godwin, and you cut the school in half, but it got back up to 2,000. I think they're back up to 2,000 students now.
So for people who don't know, you worked at Tucker
for 16 years.
16 years,
yeah.
And then you went into the ministry.
Well, I went to seminary, and then the Lord always put me in small town country, so I had to get out a magnifying glass half time, find out where God was sending me.
How many years was the ministry part?
That was 26 years.
Okay.
Okay.
And now, what was the third career?
The third career, I retired.
This is the most exciting.
I retired and moved to Eastern Carolina. It was right in the middle of COVID, and that was awful. If you were preaching in church, you had to do it on Facebook or something like that. And as Matthew could tell you, I know nothing, any IT technology at all. And that's not the way you preach. You have a personal conversation with people as you're preaching. You may throw a question out, they may answer it. On the spot, your sermon will probably change as the Spirit directs. And so anyway, a good time to retire. I moved to a rural area called Terrell County, North Carolina, smallest county in North Carolina with 3,800 people. But I found a good church I'm going to, and good people, good country people. But then for 2 years I thought I'd pick up a part-time job. I worked at the food line, working in the deli. Mostly it started stocking shelves, but then they needed help in the deli. So I got pretty good at cooking chicken. And I got to know almost half the county by doing that. Now, since then.
Now wait, so you did learn how to make fried chicken?
Oh, I could rotisserie chicken, fried chicken. And of course, my signature gift when I coached cross country was chocolate chip pancakes. Most of the youngsters who ran from me, we would have on Friday night sometime, if they'd keep them out of trouble, they'd bring a sleeping bag. We'd have about 12 kids spend the night on top of a wrestling mat I had in the living room, and I'd get them up in the morning and fix them chocolate chip pancakes, and we'd go over to Tucker to run a invitational race, be it at one of the colleges or someplace, UVA, William & Mary, someplace like that.
So when you were in your last few years at Tucker, did you continue to do Young Life all the way through the end of the whole time there?
Yes.
And I know it was kind of a sad thing. My son, one of my sons, I've got 4 sons, but one of them got a variance to go to Tucker because they have the program, ROTC program,
right.
And the sad thing was just when he went there was no Young Life anymore.
Yeah.
There'd been nobody to pick it up after you left, which was kind of a sad thing.
Well, I came up here one day, I can't remember, I think I was trying to catch up with Chris Brown. He just retired as athletic director. And I was sitting in the office there waiting for him to come to show up. And I ran into 2 parents there, and their kids, they had been my Young Life kids, and they had wished that Young Life was still at Tucker High School. That was something they remembered, yeah. But Tucker was a neat school because we were, back in the 70s and 80s, we were, I think, 10% Southeast Asian. We had youngsters from Vietnam and Cambodia. They were both fallen at the time. And when there was trouble in Lebanon, we get kids from Lebanon. We got kids from Iran when that fell, when the Shah was disposed. And we had had a tremendous special education program for the west end of Henrico County. Tucker was a very, very neat experience for kids. And most of the Tucker kids actually went all around the place, all around the country, some of them different places in the world after high school. It was just, that's what made it a neat place to, I guess, prepare you for the world, really.
Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for notifications about new episodes. Thank you. When you were here at Tucker, you also, I think you said this, you taught driver's ed.
Taught driver ed. That's what taught me. People in church want to know how I learned how to pray and have faith. I said it was from teaching driver ed. And I could tell you some crazy stories, but sometimes we go out in the mornings from 6 to 8 in the morning or in the afternoon if I wasn't coaching, but I usually coach 2 or 3 sports a year. I think one time I was drifting off in the car. We were going out on the interstate, and you basically get on and off, and one of the kids turned to me and said, Coach, are we going this far out? I said, oh no, that's at Charlottesville, so many miles ahead, so we had to turn around and get back to school a little quicker. Okay, but we have some crazy stories. That's what I learned how to pray, was teaching kids how to drive. And on the range, sometimes you had to have I was quicker back then. Sometimes you had to move awful fast because we had about 8 cars driving around there with just a walkie-talkie. Yeah, so that was a good experience, I think. But I do not miss teaching driver ed. But I did. We had some great coaches and great teachers that we worked with, and good administrations as well here.
When you made the decision to leave teaching,
okay,
was that a hard decision to make, or was that?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But I've worked with young people all the time, and working in Young Life Ministry, it was great because we had a mixture of kids from all different faith traditions, Christian faith traditions and non-Christian traditions, and we got to just share the good news. And of course, that's the Holy Spirit working within the lives of people. But I've been very successful in my coaching and teaching. And my dad, he was always brutally honest. And he looked at me, and Dad would chuckle at this, I think, now. And I said, Dad, I feel like God's leading me into full-time ministry. And he looked at me and said, son, you're a damn fool. Why would you, sorry, tape.
Okay.
Why would you leave something that you're financially secure? You've been teaching, for a long time. You've done really well in your coaching. Dad was saying you've done well. Why would you leave it? But Dad always knew he'd get honest. He'd be honest with us, but he knew he gave us the freedom. That's what a good parent does. So once you change your mind, he'd get behind us and support us. But it was interesting because that fall, I made up my mind that I was going to leave at the end of the year. And then Dad ended up dying during the middle of the cross-country season. And that was the sad thing, because no matter how my kids played in soccer or basketball or cross-country, he'd be there. And
I remember here, go blue!
Yeah, he'd be, I'll tell you a story about that in a minute too. He would, I'd get that call later in the evening, and he'd either say, your kids played well or they stunk. One year in 9th grade basketball, that was a year for people to learn how to play basketball. And we had a perfect season, but it was a perfect season and we didn't win a game. And Dad at the end of the year simply said, well, your kids were perfect. I said, I know that, Dad. But sometimes in high school coaching, and some coaches, they're good at coaching a lot of talent, but in high school coaching, particularly if you ever coach in the 9th or 10th grade or JV level, you'll learn that some of them not able to do that. If they lose, they don't know how to handle that. You kind of it's not like you can recruit kids. Maybe they do it today, but back then you didn't do it. And a curious story, I tried to get out of basketball at one point, and Molly Pulowski talked me into coaching the girls JV basketball. And that was quite an experience. I'd never coached an all-girl sport. Usually I was coaching young men. And we had a neat little girl on the team, this is JV now, named Elizabeth Minetti. And she was Down syndrome, beautiful girl. And all the other girls helped her and worked with her. And I tell you what, when she made a basket in one of the ball games, the whole people watching the game, both teams just stood up and clapped. And I came back the next year after I had left just to say hi to some of my friends back at Tucker. And she could never even pronounce my name, but she ran up to me. She was about that tall. And she ran up to me and just jumped in my arms and said, Coach Hopkins, Coach Hopkins. And, that's a beautiful way of she had a pure heart.
Yeah.
And if you ever work with Down syndrome children, they just have they don't have any grudges against anybody. They just have a pure heart. It's a beautiful story. But when I left Tucker, I went to Eastern Mennonite Seminary, and that was up in outside in Harrisonburg. And
wait, before you go to that, you were going to say a story about go blue. You said there was some story about that?
No, but in my first couple of years, soccer started off in the wintertime here because they didn't think soccer would last. Coach Chenault was the first soccer coach at Tucker. I think he basically got all the kids out of the smoking area. They don't have smoking areas anymore, but he probably got the most rambunctious kids they ever had at Tucker, and they were the kids I inherited to coach. Okay, and I was one who usually calmed people down and pretty even keel, and gosh, we were mixed in. We played with the private schools and a few of the public schools that had it, because Tucker was the very first school in Central Virginia to have soccer. And I took it over from Coach Chenault. He did a good job getting it started. And by the way, from what I hear, when I left, the guy who followed me has done a fantastic job. But my dad was in the stands and he was kind of carrying on. And one of the officials came up to him and said, "Can you quiet that man down in the stands?" I just looked at him and said, "I don't know who he is, but I'll talk to him." and when the official got downfield a little bit, I kind of motioned Dad. I said, "Dad, please kind of calm down, because you could cost us the game, because soccer coaches and even football coaches and basketball coaches, they're responsible. They can make you lose a game. And if you're the only one on a trip and there's no other school official, if you get kicked out, you have to forfeit the game." So I had to get on my dad for that. But that was an interesting thing. Dad felt like if you bought a ticket, you could do and say about anything you wanted to in the stands.
Oh wait, so I want people watching this, if you know Coach and you have a good story about him, put a comment with some of the story into the comment section of the video. But here's my story. So when I was in the soccer program, I think it was not my junior year. Coach, we had just finished practice, and we had all gotten into the locker room, and we were all getting ready, changing clothes and stuff. And Coach was like really kind of like sort of halfway upset with us, because he felt like we weren't doing throw-ins properly. So he was like, "Hey, everybody watch. And he's like, when you do a throw-in, you take the ball, you put your foot out in front of you, take the ball back, and you keep that front foot down, the back foot down, and you throw." And he threw it, and he knocked out like 3 lights. There was shattered glass everywhere.
Yeah. Coach Poole, who was helping me out, he coached JV, and he went right back in the coach's office just laughing his head off at me. But
if you have a good story, share it in the comments.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. I'm who I am, one way or another. But again, when I left to go to seminary,
I want to ask you a question.
Okay,
Because this is the open booth.
Okay.
So, and some people know this. I know this, but I think it's important because people may not know this about you. There was a time when you were thinking maybe about getting married.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
I was 30. I was coaching 3 sports, getting up here at 5:30 to 5:45 in the morning, and not getting home till 8 o'clock at night sometimes, or for game day later than that. And I just wasn't ready to change my life at that time.
Yeah.
So basically I could say I was married to Tucker High School when I was here. And then in ministry, I've always been kind of married to the church. And
I think you had said at one point that you didn't feel it was fair to share that, have to put your wife through that.
And believe me, there are a lot of great coaches at Tucker who coached for 30, 40 years, and they had to be married to a very special woman to make that happen, okay? Now, can I go on to seminary?
I'm trying to touch on a little bit of you personally that people don't know.
I know that.
And people appreciate the fact that you've made some sacrifices in your life to do the things you've done for lots of different people.
Right. At seminary, the first class they had us take, and a lot of folks today, they need to know their scriptures first and foremost, okay? We had to take either the Greek track or the Hebrew track. And of course, the Hebrew would have been Old Testament because it was written in Hebrew, and the New Testament's written in Koine Greek. So my first class in seminary was elementary Greek from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 or 5 o'clock. We'd have a quiz every day for 12 weeks in the summertime. And I told the Lord if he got me through elementary Greek, I could do about anything. And I think when I finally graduated from seminary, I think I had about 6 or 7 years worth of Greek, and we had to translate one book in the Bible. I think we did the book of Galatians. I'm just thankful the Lord only had about five, I can't remember, 5 or 6 chapters in there. But I could do about 1 line per hour. That was the speed of my translating Greek. But it helped me to understand, because many of you may have different versions of the Bible. And you say, oh, this is the Lord spoke in King James. He didn't speak in King James. That was a later English edition of the Bible. And some languages, when you translate the Bible, they don't translate well into English or other languages, so you get a word or something that's close to it. So that makes me understand a little bit different when one version rotates. All I know is the Holy Spirit is actually the author of the Scriptures, and you need to realize that what's written is what the Spirit had inspired amongst the Christians who were God directed to write it. But anyway, seminary was good. I ended up pastoring my first charge. I was going 100 miles back and forth to seminary 3 days a week, sometimes 4, pastoring 4 little churches 100 miles down in a place called Eagle Rock. And then I went to a 3-point charge down in Dinwiddie. Then I went back in the valley, and I was in the Shenandoah Valley on 2 different churches for 18 years. So that was a good ministry there. But the most important thing I learned in seminary, and you see this in Jesus, a preacher is a servant. You're in servant ministry with the people you're sharing the gospel with. And if you look through the Gospels, it's coming up on Easter pretty soon here, and Jesus getting down and washing the disciples' feet at the Last Supper. Jesus came as a servant, and that's when not just Christian leaders, all Christians are to go out and have a servant heart. Okay?
Well, I know that and all the people I've met that know you, and of course my experience with you is that, like, I think somebody wrote a book, but it just kind of embodies, I've never read the book, but it's called Extreme Hospitality. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you embody that in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. Like, it's in the date and time that we were in high school in the 80s and stuff like that. You're like the place where kids could go as a safe space, kind of like, mm-hmm. I think you've told me stories about kids that, their parents were having a really hard time, so they would show up at your doorstep, the child would be there and like need, you to be able to talk with somebody for a while. Yeah. And, like, you're the counselor almost, and like, mm-hmm. and that was I think that maybe a lot of people watching this can relate to that. The maybe their kids or that you really did like have a very servant. Right. It's another way of saying servant's heart, that you're always, your cupboards were practically bare because you were giving out all your food, but there was always food because God was always providing. So yeah. And people would tell stories, like you would take some of the teams out to get food, and you'd pay for steaks, if they got their personal best and all this stuff. And
thank goodness they had Western Sizzling. They were a little bit more reasonable in buying. Steaks were cheaper back then.
Yeah.
But you try to do something to, for instance, I think once a year I give the cross-country kids, and we had 54 boys on team one year. We had big cross-country teams.
Yeah.
And I give them a time that was about 20 seconds better than their best time. But the sad part of this story is I didn't usually preview the course because I couldn't keep up with the kids and run. I just make sure they all finished and got back on the bus, keeping track of where they were, and none of them were taking shortcuts or anything. And I jogged that course. I was up at Lee Davis one time, and I thought, well, it's a long course. So that had, as I figured out what I thought their time would be, I think I had 16 kids beat me that time. So that cost me.
They got their personal best.
They got their personal best.
But 16 steak dinner.
We had some really good runners, but we had them from really good ones who were improving. That's a nicer way of putting it, over time. But we want to encourage each one to improve. We even give out little, Frank Lynch helped me a lot because he ran the West End trophies, and he helped me with ideas, and we could give kids like little ribbons or little trophies to just show their improvement during the season. But we wanted to encourage each one to do their best.
Well, I kind of combined 2 of these stories, which was, I remember the Richmond Times-Dispatch came out and did a picture with, I think, the cross-country team that I was in.
Right.
It was like one of the largest
Right down the hill
cross-country.
here, yeah.
How many people was in that year?
It's
It was
probably
like
40 something.
40
like that,
something.
yeah.
And there was like 7 different nationalities or something
Right,
like
well,
that too.
Yeah, we had most cross-country teams have about 7 to 10 kids. That's about it. You only need 7.
He needed a fisheye lens to pick it all. It was
Right, yeah,
like-
big lens is
yeah.
about that far from my nose when he took the picture. Yeah, I think it was Paul Woody, I believe. I think that was the one who was doing that. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's
Well, I know that when you were at Tucker, we won't get into details, but you practically fostered a few kids, and after that, when you got into the ministry, you kind of did the same thing. You were practically
yeah.
fostering a couple kids at different times.
Yeah, I had a former exchange student who lived with me for a year, and that was interesting too. Yeah, and then I had when I was preaching, the very last year, I had a young man who needed a place to stay, and he was 19 years old, and he couldn't stay with his best friend. Something was going on with his family, and so some of my church ladies came up to me and said, "Pastor Rob, he'll take him in." And this boy, I had to learn how to cook breakfast again in the morning and take him to school. But he's a great guy. He lives in Puerto Rico now. I think he's 24. He's learning how to be a minor league baseball umpire, and then hopefully and prayerfully he'll be a professional one day umpire. But I've raised a few other people. People got in trouble and they stayed with me a while. That's people of different ages through the years. Yeah.
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 And now in your life down in North Carolina, you shared with me that you're active in a church down there, and you're helping out in their food ministry.
Yeah, we have I help this church is about 20 miles from where I live. It's the Gum Neck Church of Christ. So I'm just going there because they asked me to come help them out a little bit. And I teach Sunday school once a month, the adult class. Sometimes I'll lead a worship service, but they're just good people. You go where the Spirit leads you. And I help with another man. We help to serve about 6 or 7 women, and us 2 men. We make meals for about 50 people in the community, and we take them out to them every week on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
It's a great ministry.
So I'm going to ask you the question is, looking over your life, would you, if you had like something to do differently, would you do something differently?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't make some of the mistakes that I made in life. I won't get to those right now. That'd take too long. But we all make
The mistakes might have taught you something.
Well, we all make mistakes, and that's why we can't earn our salvation by being good, because we all mess up. And that's why we needed a Savior. That's a good place to end in a minute, because we couldn't reach God by ourselves. So He came to reach us in sending His Son, Jesus.
Yeah, I think that when I'm talking to you, again, it's you know hundreds of people like me.
Probably thousands of people. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell a little thing. Keep on Facebook. Keep on putting your comments on his Facebook for his birthday.
Because I don't have Facebook anymore.
But sometimes I'll read his Facebook birthday messages to him, and he knows every single one of you.
I know what sport you played, whether you're in class, how you drove, or which church you came from. Okay. But one thing I am still doing, I wrote Bible studies when I was preaching for years on half the Bible, and I started doing it again in my retirement. And I'm old school. I don't put them on what you call email. I type them on my laptop, which is connected to a printer by a cord. I don't have internet in my house, basically. I don't want to spend the money on that. And I send out about 41 Bible studies every week. And it's just personal, because then you have something in front of you. Most people get 1,000 emails and all they do is erase, erase, erase. But it gets back to the whole idea the Bible's personal. And the gospel is personal, because Jesus came to meet us one-on-one.
Yeah.
He came to be the Savior of the whole world, but He comes to each one of us individually. And there's nothing that happens by chance in your life. Nothing. God has you bump into somebody or talk to somebody, and usually I'm not short on words. One pastor on a trip we took to Israel said, Rob, is there ever a time you didn't vocalize every thought you had in your head? Because I can talk a whole lot. Some of you who know me, sometimes I actually shut up and I listen, but it doesn't happen as often. So when you get me, I'm who I am.
So to kind of bring this all together, well, first of all, people are watching this and they're probably wondering why you have a patch on your eye. So what's that all about?
I had cataract surgery, my second one, this morning, and I have to keep this on until tomorrow morning. And hopefully I'll be able to take it off, except for taking a shower or when I'm sleeping at night. And then the big thing is I can't pick up 10 pounds for another 10 days or do something crazy.
When you told me you're having the cataract surgery, you were saying, because you live in the rural North Carolina,
right?
But you're coming up here to Richmond, so you stayed at my house the
right.
last time a couple of weeks ago, and you staying at my house now while you're getting the surgery, and then tomorrow when you get the checkup afterwards. So something that you don't know is when I shared that with a few people, and there was a GoFundMe started, and there's over $5,000 for you that we're going to give you as a gift.
Well, I appreciate that. You didn't have to do that, though.
It wasn't me. It was all the people who I shared it with. And so we're giving you everybody that contributed to the GoFundMe has already put in over $5,000 to give to you to go towards your surgeries and things like that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so that's a surprise that you know.
Yeah, it is a surprise. Yeah, Chris Brewster almost let it out of the hat the other day. Called me, but he didn't say anything. Okay.
Yeah.
We better end on that.
So welcome to the.
Okay.
Glad for coming into the open booth, and we're gonna make room for the next person in the open booth.
All right. Thank you. Oh dear.
Please read the description below to find out more about the GoFundMe page for Coach Hoskins. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for notifications about new episodes. Thank you.